That's all for the SITREP for the day of 562 to 563 for the 8th to the 9th of September. So some conclusions. I still cannot understand why the Ukrainians want to land here. Like, it's really a waste of resources to keep sending boats in this direction, and then got intercepted, and it's like you can't even build a defense line. Let's say I give the Ukrainians capturing Olenivka. It's not going to do much per se, because ultimately the Black Sea Fleet is around, the Air Force is still around from the Russians, and this entire force can be wiped out in one fell swoop if the Russians just push them. So, and given that the lack of vessels, which means that the Ukrainian forces can't really land a huge force at Olenivka, so I'm not really sure what's the point of doing this. Similarly, we have the same problems around the Dnipro River region. Ukrainian forces landing 12 soldiers with 2 boats on 2 sides of this island here between the Konka River. And so what is this 12 troops that's going to do? Set up a new village? I mean, I'm not sure. The real world doesn't work like a real-time strategy. You can just spawn soldiers out of the air. But there is a few really huge thing. Particularly, I would say the first one is actually the Russian offensive failing. The fighting reported at Novoyehorivka turns into a Ukrainian offensive, especially fighting reported around the Sverdlovy region becomes the fighting in the south of Serhievka, shows that the Russians are actually getting pushed back. So from here, they reported they are defending around here to now they are defending around here. So this is definitely showing that the Ukrainians are actually pushing them back, even at the only place that the Russians are doing offensive. And this is actually looking really bad for the Russian forces. And not on top of that, south of Bakhmut is looking really fragile right now. Ukrainian forces gathering a huge force at Konstantinivka. They're going to double down on whatever breakthrough they are going to make. And this breakthrough currently is now in the Andriivka region, with the Russian forces already withdraw out of the town. Ukrainian forces have not exactly capture it, despite I reported it as a capture. But it looks like inevitable, especially if you look at the south of Andriivka, the Ukrainian forces have already reached the railway line, and the Russian forces are currently trying to hold this position. And this position is probably going to be pretty fragile as the Ukrainians going to break through, especially as I mentioned, the forces from Konstantinivka reinforcing. This is going to create a overload, and the Russians are going to lose this position south of Andriivka, creating an avalanche of breakthroughs if the Russians do not have other prepared positions in the rear, which is what I'm going to be investigating next. And Klishchiivka situation also looking really bad, with the Russians, pro-Russian sources talking about their line is just 400 meters away from the railway line around here. And this is actually a very, very small ground left for the Ukrainians to push. And I think Klishchiivka will be lost very, very, very soon. So this is a situation in the South Bakhmut. The other major place is the fighting over at Opitne. The Ukrainian forces probably surprised the Russians with this attack towards Opitne, and the Russians are now trapped into this town, as the Ukrainian forces have already reached the outskirts in their push towards Opitne. This fighting only started from the 7th, so within 3 days, the Ukrainian forces have actually progressed quite a bit. When the Russian Defense Ministry only mentioned previously the fighting was at Khimik, which is here. So from Khimik to Opitne, this looks really bad. And the other part I would say is this massive crack in the armor over at Novomayoske, with geolocation of Ukrainian forces at this position showing that the Ukrainian forces have actually entered into the northwestern part of Novomayoske. And we also have information that they have breakthrough into the northeast. So this is it looks from a strategy picture, it looks really big. And with redeployment of Ukrainian forces at Zolotaneva and Preshestivka from Uruzhaine and Prione region, they go to double down and triple down and break through Novomayorsky, and this is going to threaten Kermanchai, Yevhenivka, and Shevchenko, as the Ukrainian forces will be able to break through in this manner. So, and then Novodonetsky will have to be abandoned. Shevchenko will have to be abandoned if the Ukrainians just go to the rear to hit Yehorivka, and then Pelivka will be in deep danger. So this breakthrough over at Novomayorsky, if it managed to become a breakthrough, will become a very significant strategically speaking. And however, with the redeployment also allow the Russians to secure Prione. But to be honest, when you compare Novomayorsky and Prione, Novomayorsky is a way more strategically important town for the Ukrainians to capture. And then also we come to the hottest front, or the most exciting front for the Ukrainians over at the Orikhiv sector in the Robotine, Vobove region. As I mentioned during the SITREP, all these geolocations shows that the Ukrainian forces are around this area here. And this actually, so let me zoom in a bit. So it's around this area here. This is probably where the Ukrainians are, and this might suggest that the Russian forces actually have the front line around like this. And given that the geolocation, the videos showing for this part, this field are actually all heavy fighting. So it given that I think this particular one is a Ukrainian soldier firing an RPG, the Russians must be very, very close by. So the front line might actually look really tight here, and then the fighting is very heavy as the Ukrainians try to do this salient out. And so the front line might actually look more like this in reality. I just want to say, and this bulge here is going to be really, really hard to maintain. So but we shall continue to monitor, and we shall see. Ukrainian forces over this position is pretty relaxed, which means the front line is probably a bit further away. And so the situation over at Novoprokopivka is definitely nowhere close to the critical crisis kind of thing that you'll probably read on pro-Ukrainian sources on Twitter. Is not that much of a crisis just yet. Ryba continued to maintain that Robotine is a gray zone with fire control over the village. Ukrainians cannot break through. However, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry actually reported success in the south of Robotine, and they continue to say success in the south of Robotine. So I will overwrite Ryba and say that the Ukrainians are indeed in the south of Robotine, most likely. Most likely that's the case, because ultimately the Ukrainian Defense Ministry is the more credible source, because they are the official source as compared to Ryba, which is the OSINT. So we shall continue to monitor how this goes in this situation here. There is no clear indication of Ukrainian forces capturing these two entrenchments. So I will still maintain that these two entrenchments is where the line is, where the Russians are having control. Verbove region is looking not that positive for the Ukrainians, because after the initial field geolocation of Ukrainian forces in this area here, the Ukrainian forces have been largely pushed out. It seems to me, because the only geolocation that we have is actually at this position, from Z Archive, a pro-Russian source, showing that they are here. And so there could be a possibility that this is just a raid, and they try to push as fast as they can, and then they got destroyed. They have to evacuate, and now the secure line is actually still outside, pretty much still in the outside region here, not so deep into, so close to Verbove. This is most likely the case. And the famous I just want to highlight for those people who are not subscribed to YouTube membership or Patreon or Coffee, the famous Challenger 2 tank that was destroyed is actually geolocated at this very position, just northwest of Verbove. So it's actually here, around this area here. And what is the significance? It's not about, it's a Challenger tank, or whatnot. Is that the Challenger tank is the most advanced tank for the Ukrainians, and that they are being used towards Verbove. So now that we have this geolocation, we can know that the Ukrainians are indeed pushing Verbove with their best forces. So this actually reflects how important Verbove is strategically for the Ukrainians' battle plan. So that they're actually using their best forces in this direction. We shall continue to see, like I mentioned, given the geolocation and the reports that are coming out in this region here, it does seem that the Ukrainians are not that close to Verbove. The Russian lines are probably now around here. This is the feeling that I get. And we also have this geolocation showing that the front line is indeed around this area here. So yeah, so if I draw a quick one, this is probably the likely front line right now. This is the front line right now. And if you look at, if this is the front line, it looks really ugly. It looks really ugly. And yeah, it looks really ugly, you know. So yeah, it looks like a Brontosaurus or no, a Diplodocus. No, this is a dinosaur. But yeah, but this is the situation here with the Ukrainian forces, you know, trying to push in this way. And yeah, you can analyze for yourself, what does this mean. Does this mean that this offensive is going to go extinct like this dinosaur, or is this actually a pincer on Novo-Prokopivka, as well as doing a big push for Verbove, and this will end their first major offensive as a strategic success for the Ukrainians if they are able to capture these two towns over here and over here. Yeah, so anyway, this is the conclusion for the SITREP. And for those that want to to watch the SITREP, the full SITREP, the full technical SITREP, do become a YouTube member. You can be the member on the main channel or the DPA War channel. Both will have access to the SITREP, or you can be a supporting member on Patreon, Coffee, or Boosty. All these will have, as well as locals. If you are a paying member or locals, similarly you will have access to this SITREP. And so join the DPA army, become a sergeant, an officer, or a general. Officer and general will have access to this map. So thank you for watching, and press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next update.